What happens if you need a blood transfusion and you would like to not get blood that has the mRNA injection in it? We talked about this subject back in episode 36 with Jessica Rose, Dr. Jessica Rose, when she was looking at and assessing the VAERS data and how she was seeing the injections were having an effect on the blood. Well, today we have a possible solution for you on the podcast. We have Dr. Clinton Ohlers from SafeBlood, which is a blood bank that's doing just that, collecting blood donations and storing blood for you personally that does not have the mRNA injection in it. He's going to show us under the microscope what the difference is, what that looks like for blood that doesn't have those injections versus blood that does, and ways that SafeBlood can help you and you can help them. So without further ado, let's dive into our episode with SafeBlood and Dr. Clinton Ohlers. Where do we go from here? Because the battle has just begun. As eyes open, we continue to arm ourselves with the truth in all aspects of our lives, asking questions and relentlessly searching for answers, educating ourselves and forging a new path forward. Hear from real people faithfully pursuing freedom. This is Faithful Freedom with Teryn Gregson, presented by We The Patriots USA, a nonprofit 501c3 organization working to preserve and reclaim our God-given inalienable rights. Dr. Ohlers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Teryn. It's great to be here.
I love and I hope that people go and research you because your testimony is so great. So I want people to know right off the bat that, you are one of those among the scientific community that came to Christ after, you went through your education. And so I want people to know that background of you. And so because of that, we will talk a little bit about how churches can get involved in all of this. But first, let's just talk about the basics. What is SafeBlood?
Well, yeah, great. SafeBlood is, we're an organization that matches, well, we do several things. You could say that our function is to decrease the need for decrease the need for blood that's been vaccinated with the mRNA vaccine and make available blood that has been, is from donors who are unvaccinated. And we'll look and see why you would want to do that in the first place, certainly if you're unvaccinated, but even if you are vaccinated yourself, that's something that you would want to strongly consider if you need a blood transfusion. And so there's two arms to it. The thing that we're most innovative in is that what we do is a matching system. So let's say you know that you need a transfusion. Okay, it would be good to be a member with us. And as a member, then we can link you up with somebody in your area. Actually, it wouldn't just be somebody, be a number of people in your area who are unvaccinated and are willing to give blood. And so then we handle and facilitate all of the details of working with the hospital to get you and them all lined up so that it all comes together, right? And then the hospital or clinic or laboratory where you're having this happen, that is, you just show up and you get your blood. So that's what we do for people. Now,
I think that's so, and I want to highlight to people how that is such a wonderful service because we know the American Red Cross has said publicly and tweeted out that they are not going to mark a difference between the two. So they don't know, you don't know when you're getting the blood transfusion, typically whether or not it has vaccinated blood or non-vaccinated. And so this is important that you guys know and have that distinction.
Yeah, that is a real disappointment with the American Red Cross. And we had spoken with the Red Cross in Switzerland, where we originated out of Switzerland. We're, an international organization doing this. And yet you see, the Red Cross holds the official position that the vaccines are safe and effective. And therefore, if they're safe and effective, they, by definition, can't be doing anything of lasting concern to the blood or the blood supply. So they simply will not check or segregate vaccinated from unvaccinated blood.
Yes, and you guys are doing so. How did you get involved with SafeBlood?
Well, That's a great story. What I would like to do though is add one more thing that we do is as an element of SafeBlood. A lot of what we do is medical. We're working for medical freedom, and we are really trying to educate the public. What most people don't understand is that there are other things that you can do to get your own blood. Right, your own blood is the safest blood, and so if you're unvaccinated, right, or you're going in for a procedure, you can get what's called auto transfusion, which is you are hooked up to a machine that just simply recirculates your own blood, right?
Oh,
That's safer than a transfusion. I mean, there are some risks, right, with transfusion. It's not 100% risk free. People don't realize that. So another thing you could do is you can do what's called autologous donation, which is where you have your own blood drawn ahead of time and stored for your operation, and things like that, and along with the volume expanders in the blood. It's our understanding that those methods could reduce need for blood by about 80%.
oh,
Okay,
wow, yeah, and that would
right.
just be great across the board, right? We don't really, um, you know, the blood donation process is so anonymous, if you will. And, you go up to many churches do this, you go up to the bus in the parking lot and off your blood goes and you never know where it goes or who it saves or
Yeah.
whatnot. But this is a great idea in the fact that you would be, storing this for yourself and to help yourself if that need ever arose.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, there is a company that offers like deep freeze blood.
Mhm.
Uh, that I mean, that's a fairly new technology, and that's something that people could do long term. If you want a blood, say 20 years from now, they say that they're able to, freeze it and then unfreeze it safely. I'm not that familiar with that, but that is something that's available. But typically, the shelf life of blood is about 4 to 6 weeks
Okay.
if you're giving. So you'd know that you need, say you have a surgery coming up, in a
Sure.
couple of weeks, and then you do that. And then the other thing is that, friends and family, right? You have a circle, you have a network, and they could. There's ways that you can reach out either from yourself or people and do that. And that's a freedom that we have in the United States. So we're based out of Switzerland, right? But in Switzerland, you're not allowed to do those methods. You're not allowed to do also directed donation.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
which what we're talking about was where we say, okay, I've got a third party. We want their blood, whether it's a friend of yours or somebody just in a locality that we've connected you with. Um, and that's something that arose after, it seems to have risen with COVID-19. It used to be no, not a problem at all for particularly your own blood. There's no reason that people should be prevented from doing their own blood. That's the safest blood. We do not know of any scientific or medically beneficial reason that they would do that. That seems to be a policy. But in the United States, happily, we have that freedom, and in several other countries. So we're really well poised here to take advantage of that. So
That's
those
wonderful.
are a few things I wanted to add so people understand that really not only the expanse of what they do, but the expanse of what their options are.
Absolutely. That's very helpful. And just to, let people know that you're working on that medical freedom side, that's something that we do here at We the Patriots USA. You can go to wethepatriotsusa.org to prayerfully give and help us to continue those medical freedom efforts. So before we dive in and show
Yeah.
people, take them under the microscope and show people the difference in what this blood looks like, I want you to tell people your background so they
Yeah,
know your
absolutely.
credentials.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I received my PhD in history from the University of Pennsylvania. I focused on history of science, and I was particularly interested in science's impact on culture, particularly religion. That had a lot to do with my own, Christian background. As a former atheist, I, became a Christian at about age 22, right after I graduated
Mhm.
college, and became very interested in, the intellectual aspects of the faith. I mean, that had been very, key to my actually coming to faith were intellectual questions. And so I went on, I got a master's in history of Christian thought from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. From there, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, got another master's in history and PhD in history from there. And then, I've been at the Creation Project, at the Carl F. H. Henry Center for Theology. From that led to Hong Kong, where I was teaching in Hong Kong at the University of Hong Kong for a couple of years. And my main interest was history of science and its engagement with culture and society, and particularly with religious thought. So I was working on that for a couple of years there, and teaching. And Hong Kong, it's just a fabulous place to live and to be. And we had no interest in leaving. I was there on it was a 2-year position, and all of that coincided with the outbreak of COVID-19, and that we still were not interested in leaving. But at that time, we had inside sources within China that were reporting that it was much worse in Wuhan than the Chinese were letting on.
Mhm.
So apparently they were burning, bodies in parking lots because the crematoriums were overfull. In retrospect, are we sure that was not disinformation? I'm not 100% sure. I think it was accurate. We had it confirmed through someone else that we knew in Beijing, and that and in any case, with the lockdowns that were going to occur, and that we could get quarantined separately from our children in Hong Kong, it was a no-brainer. We were going to return, and it did make sense. Wuhan's very polluted. The Americans have no idea the level of pollution in Southeast Asia, and so people's lungs are very compromised there. So it's very believable that they would have had a higher death rate than other locations. So I still hold that out as plausible. But we returned quickly, and the amazing thing was when I returned to the United States, so many things that just seemed clear in Hong Kong were controversial here. The idea that it would have emerged from the Wuhan lab, that was, we didn't know. It was one plausible theory. It seemed like a very plausible theory. By the time we left, we knew it was probably the most plausible theory, just because of study that had come out in the Lancet regarding the origins of it. We knew it couldn't have been the Wuhan market. If it wasn't the Wuhan market, where might it have been? There were a number of things, virologists talking about the ACE2 receptor and for cleavage sites, and how that was not natural. And so you knew that this looked like a man-made
Absolutely.
organism. You came back to the United States, and that, unbeknownst to me, right, Anthony Fauci is out doing damage control with his lieutenants, who have come to him and said, this looks like it came from the lab. They can't have that. They've gone on national TV. They're saying this is basically conspiracy theory, right? The favorite word you throw around when you want to put people off your track. And so I talk about it with a colleague and friend at Vanderbilt, and he's treating me like I got a tinfoil hat on, and I'm just thinking,
You were there on the ground. You
yeah,
knew. Yeah.
like, this is the logical. This is I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it couldn't have come from nature. I'm just saying this is certainly a plausible thing, and it looks like the evidence keeps rolling in to say that it was. So now, of course, but then, of course, it takes a year and a half for then finally, people like Redpath at the CDC and all, it would come out and find out all of the people that were in the know were thinking that at the same time. So, so it was fascinating what we landed back to. And one of the fascinating things was this irrational debate over hydroxychloroquine when it made no sense. And then, of course, ivermectin. So my interest in history of science went from the history of science in the past, say in the 19th century and the 16th and 17th centuries, where I was very interested, to the history of science going on right now, because it became clear that there was something deeply wrong with medical science as it was being practiced in the United States relative to this pandemic. I became fascinated by that.
It
That
is so
led,
fascinating. Yes. I love that you give and lend that perspective to it all, because it's something that we talk about on this show too. And to pull back the lens on that from your perspective and bring in your prior historical knowledge to it is fascinating to people. So then go ahead.
Well, yeah. So, for example, one of the first things I did, and that got me into writing for the Free Press Media Group and World Tribune, was I was having conversations with a friend at Vanderbilt who teaches medicine there. He was very against hydroxychloroquine. I was asking him, well, what's the basis of the, what you're saying is medical consensus on this? Because I'm this anecdotal evidence that's supposedly anecdotal looks pretty strong to me. And of course, it wasn't really anecdotal evidence. That itself was a mischaracterization. But so he says, well, I'll send you a couple articles. And he does. And this is back in, we're talking, this is in May of 2020,
Mhm.
right? And right at the beginning of this. And so I looked at these articles, and the one was a New England Journal of Medicine, and that one had been, that was a piece of junk. I mean, you can't believe that a journal of such a reputation would be publishing something so bad. But later, a friend in medicine explained to me how that happens, and it's quite commonplace.
Yes.
Okay. So then the other was a Journal of the American Medical Association study, came out May 11th, and it looked at all of those early cases of in New York where they'd been given the hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin under the emergency authorization, of
Mhm.
course, which we now know was never necessary because you could always have treated patients with that since it's already an approved drug.
Yes.
But anyhow, so the they looked at those early cases and came away with a conclusion that there was no signal of effectiveness. And that was so, people don't remember this study because they think the one that really took prominence was the Lancet study, the
Mhm.
Surgisphere study that said, oh, it was killing people, around the world. And it turned out that data was completely fake, right? But those studies and later randomized controls trials that were designed to fail, actually one case designed to kill, those came later and solidified opinion. But this JAMA study was the thing that helped turn the ship in the wrong direction. And as great an illuminary as Dr. William Schaffner down at Vanderbilt, he's in infectious diseases. I mean, his CV, the number of publications he has would take anyone's breath away. He came out and said that this study put the nail in the coffin of hydroxychloroquine. So I'm looking at the study and I'm thinking, I don't get it. Yeah, the conclusion says that, and the abstract says that, but the data looks like it shows hydroxychloroquine is effective. If you just simply regroup the groups based on when the drug should have been effective and take out the people for which it shouldn't have been effective and do your analysis there, then what happens? And so I got a friend who's a quantum physicist to help me with the statistics, and I said, just can you show me, am I doing this right? And so he looks at it. We put together a spreadsheet. When you grouped the groups properly, it was off the charts in regards to what's known as the scientific signal of causation or of effect,
Mhm.
which 2 standards of deviation is what you need, and we were way above 2 standards of deviation, or well above it, just by taking out the people that shouldn't have been in the group. Then when you realize that the people that shouldn't have been in the supposedly treated group because they were treated so late the drug would never be effective, when you realize they are actually untreated, so let's group these groups properly, then it was off the chart signal that hydroxychloroquine had been working right there in the original data. This was shocking, and the way I was writing the article, I was compelled to believe that there was intent here, that no one who had set out to understand whether this drug worked would possibly have botched the groupings in this way. I can understand saying, let's just look at everybody who had hydroxychloroquine, right? Because everybody
Mhm.
did need to say that. Then say, but then to not do the additional work to really understand efficacy, so I had lines in that article that said, it looks like the data was really intended to be poisoned here. And these things looked intentional, but you have to rewind to May of 2020, especially for an academic. I mean, this is unthinkable that in peer-reviewed scientific journals, with supposedly being contributed by the best minds in the world, that this is going on, right? I mean, talk about conspiracy theory, right? So, and my friend is saying, he's like, Clinton, you can't put that in. He says that will turn off the scientific community. They will never consider this as, that's just far-fetched, right? And although he agreed that probably that it certainly looked like, he didn't deny that it looked like it. And he didn't deny, and he was the one who turned me on to the term, the pharma industrial complex,
Mhm.
right? So it's not that he wasn't aware, but he just said that people won't accept this. And so so we took all that stuff out, and we delivered it straight and let people draw their own conclusions. Now 2 years later, right, we are
Oh, yeah.
so much wiser. I mean, this has been the destruction of the naivete of so many people, so many of us. My level of naivete going into this is just, I look back and think, wow, ignorance was bliss, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And we've had so many doctors, scientists, researchers, statisticians on this show that have been exposed to the complex there the medical industrial and the big pharma industrial complex that you're speaking of, and how the legitimacy of these medical journals they were already creeping down prior to COVID because of the how political they have become. And then it just exploded and was taken to the next level during COVID.
Yeah. And that, let's do a plug here because it's been out now for several months, maybe close to a year. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci,
Mhm.
not just about Fauci. It's about what Fauci is at the center of. And if you want to understand this more, every page of that book is a page turner from beginning to end. I've listened to it on Audible twice. And if anybody wants to understand what's going on in medicine and how things have been corrupted all the way down to the university levels of university research and how this has been going on for years, right? We
Mhm.
finally picked up on it, or people like me finally picked up on it. Maybe you were on it earlier, but we picked up on it right in the last 2 years. But this is, Fauci or Kennedy shows how this has been going on literally for decades. There are
Absolutely.
no.
And so many of those doctors that we talked to, some of them have been investigating these, vaccines in general for years and have been just ostracized by that community. And now I think people are starting to think, oh, maybe these guys were onto something. But tell us how all of those realizations led you to SafeBlood.
Well, so what happened was I then, I also do a show too called Broken Truth on brokentruth.com. So,
Mhm.
and with former CNN producer and Hollywood creative, has worked with really interesting people, Chris Pratt and Jeff Goldblum, and a number of these, leading people in Hollywood. And so we put together a show, and we have a lot of fun with it. And actually, we sort of have fun with, but we focused so much on, we have so many tragic stories really of people who have been vaccine damaged on the show that, this is a somber time really. And, but one of the interviews we did was with George Della Pietra, the founder of SafeBlood. We said, this is an important issue. People started to realize, well, wait, what's the next level of thing that we're going to be dealing with? And people started realizing, well, it could be blood transfusions. I mean, how is medicine going to be affected going forward? Once we're through with the mental crisis of how we deal with COVID, and then the mental crisis of how we deal with this vaccine, your mind goes on to the next thing, right? And
Absolutely.
so that just seemed like a natural, concern to delve into more deeply. And it just, I also have an old friend who's a mutual connection with George, and they said, look, can you come in, be our U.S. spokesperson? Can you communicate to the media for us on this? And I said, I'd be happy to do it. I think it's such an important issue.
That's wonderful. And it is. It's something that we've been talking about and wondering about on this podcast, as I said. So let's dive into looking at these, going underneath the microscope and looking at these
Yeah.
samples. I'm going to just put up a screen grab of the comparison of these samples as I go ahead and look for the video here that you sent over. SafeBlood has, you see that this is in German on here, that the scientists from SafeBlood have taken samples and shared them and showed them to other people. So here you see, I'm going to take this off, and here you see these samples. Let's talk about them. Tell me what we're looking at here.
Okay, so this is what we're looking at here
Oh,
is
here we go.
the. Okay,
I'm
yeah, go
sharing
ahead.
the wrong
Oh,
one.
yeah,
Here we go.
excellent,
That's
thank you. This is what you want to see. So
mhm.
everybody, we just spoiler alert. We just showed you what you don't want to see. But yeah, so this is what you want to see, and this is blood. Free flowing. Yeah, go ahead and mute that because it's all German. So much of the research being done on this is coming out of Germany. I mean, the Germans, a lot of it on a lot of different levels, a lot of different things concerning the vaccine. And so the German investigators here, this is previously in the video. You can find this video before I get into that. Previously in the video, you see the person come in, get the pin prick, and they put the blood right on the slide, and it goes up here. And that is unvaccinated blood. And you can see that in the dark field microscopy, It, it's very luminescent. And what I want people to focus on as they look at the cells, it's if we held still there, you'll see that it's freely moving. Obviously, on a slide, it can only move so much, right? But it's freely moving. But the important thing is look at how these cells are overlapped. Some of them are overlapped, but they great. As soon as I say that's when the camera pulls away. But some of them are overlapped, and they're just overlapped a little bit, right? Clearly, what we're looking at there is yeah, there you go, is cells that are, and you might even go ahead and pause that.
Sure.
If you just look closely, you can see that, yeah, they're on top of each other, they're in a slide, right? And that's what blood should look like. Now, if we go to this next one, we're going to see what blood shouldn't look like.
It's
And
just a stark difference. And for people that aren't familiar, the term that you used with the what did you say? The dark
field microscopy. This is how we're using to detect this. And what dark field microscopy is you take a medical microscope, and it's a type of it's a type of lens and illumination, okay, that allows you to see things in a certain way. And it I describe it a little bit like the 23andMe test. Okay, right? So the 23andMe test, it's a saliva test, and that saliva test looks, allows you to you know shows you your DNA, right? It detects your DNA, and we know that DNA does some certain things. Now, then there's other things that you can do with the DNA. You can then use that DNA for diagnosis, for saying, hey, are you susceptible to certain cancers? Are you a person who needs more B vitamins, for example, than the next person? There's lots of diagnosis things that can be done. So dark field microscopy is similar. Okay, so at the level we're looking at, this is simply detection, right? This is very straightforward. Naturopaths will also use this for diagnosis and things. So within medicine, naturopathic diagnosis is certainly much more controversial. But what is going on here is very straightforward. And, it takes about 10 years to be good with dark field microscopy. So it's not just something that you can go do at home. But what we are looking at here is a finding of it that is quite stark and clear, even to people like you and me. So, and there you go. So as we look in at this, take a look at that. I mean, what should you notice immediately? Well, it's much less luminescent, isn't it?
Yes.
And for a pretty clear reason. Look now as we close in, and maybe you might want to pause that right there. Do you see how those blood cells, right? I said vessels, they almost look like vessels, right?
Yes, they do.
Blood cells are, compared to the others, these are no longer overlapping. They are stacked. Okay?
And for those that are listening to this and aren't watching it on our Rumble channel, I encourage you to head over to our Rumble channel and look at this. We were seeing, basically, like you said, circle cells, like you would think of whenever you think of cells that are circles overlapping. And now we're seeing they look like strings or vessels. And it says on the bottom of the screen, Moderna, that this was someone that received the Moderna mRNA injection. Yes. And if anyone has died suddenly, and you saw the cloudiness of the blood, and then you saw the blood clots. I mean, this to me looks like the stringy blood clots that we've been seeing.
Yes, and so there's a doctor, a researcher out of South Africa, Dr. Pretorius, and she did a study on this. She asked the question, how she wanted to know how much of the effect of clotting is coming from the spike protein. And so what she did is she took blood and removed the platelets. Okay. And the platelets are the thing in your blood that, makes it clot. So she removed the platelets and said, let's see how blood with spike protein does in the absence of platelets. Guess what it does? It still clots aggressively. Like Lego blocks sticking together was the description. And when I hear that and then look at this, is that not what we were seeing?
Right? Absolutely.
And so now
they're all
we understand.
So it's these the circles that we were seeing before are now stuck together in these strings.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And now keep in mind, if somebody watches the video, anyone can go back to our website, watch this video.
Mhm.
It's at SafeBlood.us, and you go to our videos tab. This is the first video that comes up, and you will see this is a person who's just they've come into the lab, they get a fingerprint, this goes straight into the uh, uh, you know microscope here. There, so, you can tell where this blood comes from, and this is a presumably healthy person.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you said this is a presumably healthy person. Do we know how severe this is comparatively?
Well, yes, this is the frightening thing, because this is a question I had too, Teryn, when I looked at this at first. Is I said, well, I talked with our team and I said, well, we've got this slide up on our website, right? But I need to know, right? How representative is this? Is this a severe case that we're concerned about? Obviously, we want to avoid risks. So it's perfectly fine if we want to avoid a severe case or something that happens to, say, 10% of the people. So how severe a case is this? And that we're looking at, I mean, what we're looking at right now, right? Because this is the still shot we have on the slide, right? I mean, on the website. So how severe is this and how representative? And they said, well, that was the concern. This is what got SafeBlood going so rapidly back in 2021. When we started seeing these slides, it was 100%. Everyone who came in that we sampled for dark field microscopy who had been vaccinated has this in a blood characteristic.
That is just incredible. And I want to reemphasize that by pulling up the side-by-side comparison for people that SafeBlood is saying 100% of the time on the left-hand side of your screen there, they are seeing the blood look like that, as opposed to what it should look like on the right-hand side.
Right. And so one thing, one caveat, and then I want to go with what developed out of that. Obviously, that was startling. Okay, that was not something anybody working with dark field microscopy had seen before. It's similar to these long, and of course, obviously, it's directly connected to why we have these long fibrous clots coming out of patients on morticians' tables and things like that. And this baby Alex who died, I had one of those. But the we don't know, we looked at this at the time, it was 100%, and it'd be very interesting to do longer studies with how long does this persist for. Is there a clearing point? I mean, I believe that there must be, right? So I know that people listening to this show, many will have been vaccinated. We're not trying to create fear or give you yet another thing to be concerned about. We're trying to create awareness here, and so I don't want to make anything that might be, a scientific overstatement. This is the things were moving so fast at the beginning of all of this that
Absolutely.
you only have so much time. You look at a whole bunch of slides and you see 100% and you say, okay, we got to move on and we got to look at the problem. Other people can do the very important longer range studies of how long this persists, what does it take to clear it, and so forth. But seeing that it was 100%, something's never seen before, then we knew that there was a concern about the blood supply and there was an immediate need to start making unvaccinated blood available.
And it seems that, I mean, the proof is in the pudding there, that the correlation is undeniable.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying there. So many people didn't know at the time and, did what they thought was best and got vaccinated. So I want to ask for those that are listening that have gotten vaccinated, but, are concerned if they were to get a blood transfusion, would unvaccinated blood be beneficial to those people yet still, or does it matter?
Well, so yeah, a couple of things. For one thing, 100% of our people that gave samples were not also getting myocarditis or all of these, right? So
Okay.
I don't want to say that 100% of people are therefore at risk, even though 100% were showing this characteristic, right?
Sure.
Immune system's a powerful thing. Human body's an amazing thing. So I'm assuming that most people are overcoming this. Okay.
Mhm.
And, but this is a good question. So would somebody want to have, say, unvaccinated blood as a way of, say, thinning that out? Um, in our opinion, you don't want a transfusion, right? Unless you have to have one. So if
Sure.
your body's overcoming this, like, what's the benefit of, say, you know, if you get 1 unit or 2 units of blood, well, you've got 13 yourself, right? So now you've got 1/13 of unvaccinated blood. Like the problem, unfortunately, the problem with the vaccine is it's turning your body into a spike protein manufacturing factory, right? That's the concern here. So by adding blood to, say, somebody's system, it, you know, like how much does it, you know, you've got a factory turning out, say, a million widgets a week, and then you say, well, let's dump 10,000 non-widgets in there, right? But
Yeah.
it's still making its own widgets. So
Mhm.
so this is the problem. Well, the reason that you want the unvaccinated blood is you've been unvaccinated. That means you haven't been exposed to
Absolutely.
spike protein necessarily in your blood in this way. And I mean, certainly the case of that was that baby Alex. Here's a newborn, right? Not exposed. And now he's no longer alive. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that case later, but you don't want to be exposed if you haven't been exposed. There are other concerns, mRNA, right? Do
Mhm.
you, we don't know how long the mRNA circulates there. We don't even know how to really to test for that, right? I mean, there are things that just technology is not there for yet. So there's a possibility you could also be getting the mRNA yourself, in which case that's going to turn some of your cells into spike protein factories. So that would be a vaccination through the back door. So you want to avoid that risk from unvaccinated blood. This is true also if you've been boosted. So somebody says, well, I've been, I've had the vaccine or I've been boosted. Well, what are my, I guess I've already got the factory. Maybe it doesn't matter if I have vaccinated blood or unvaccinated. Uh, it might matter less, but I would be concerned that if I were vaccinated, this is what I tell friends and family that have been, is that I would get the unvaccinated blood simply because I wouldn't want, say, some form of added booster, right? Now, in addition to the concerns about the spike protein, which is obviously the deadly part of the vaccine, there's other dangerous things about it, right? In addition to the mRNA, there's the issue of the polyethylene glycol in the vaccine. And we don't know how long that is continuing in the system, right? And polyethylene glycol, if you recall, that there are these cases of anaphylactic shock, like you hear of a person getting the vaccine and literally at the site, right? They're collapsing at the vaccination location, right?
Yeah, they would
Remember,
have people sit there for, a few minutes after they got the vaccine to make sure they didn't have a reaction because they knew people were having them on the spot.
yeah, yeah. And my understanding is that most of these were anaphylactic shock.
Yes.
Now, why would someone have anaphylactic shock? Well, it's because the polyethylene glycol, that's the substance that's in there to help the mRNA not break down by having to be stored at such super cool temperatures. And that is something that 70%, according to Dr. Ryan Cole, 70% of us already have, are uh, preset with antibodies for that. So people can have an anaphylactic shock reaction to the polyethylene glycol, as I understand that's the source of that. So you see, we've got spike protein going in the heart, giving people myocarditis. We've got it doing a whole host of other things. I mean, when we look at the list of possible things that might have gone wrong that the CDC and FDA were discussing beforehand, I mean, from this vaccine, it's enormous. Demyelinating neuropathy, Guillain-Barré, all of these. I mean, just a whole host. Arterial fibrillation. These blood pressure stress tests that occur to people. I mean, there is a very long list. Okay, neurological disorders, a huge list, and this is already being discussed sadly, even before they did the clinical trials on children. And so there's a whole host of reasons, right, to avoid having the spike protein in your body or having the mRNA doing it. But there's also this added issue of the PEG, the polyethylene glycol. And there's a couple others I want to bring people to. You have foreign bodies, contaminants that just happen in the manufacturing process. There's other foreign bodies in the vaccine, and those can circulate in your system for up to 6 months, and some of them permanently just go into tissue. Now, another really fascinating aspect of this, and again, I learned this from Dr. Ryan Cole in his interview with Del Bigtree on the Highwire. I'd encourage anybody to go back and watch that episode. It's fascinating. He looks at these long fibrous clots that were coming out of people. And I don't know if you remember when those long fibrous clots came
Yeah.
out. I saw that. I thought it was clickbait. I thought it was sensationalism. I really did. It was just, it was really too horrifying to be true. And, now we know it absolutely was not clickbait. Those early morticians
No,
that were
and
seeing this.
I want to go on record and tell
Yeah.
people I knew of coroners that had seen this, and I was trying to early on, and I was trying to get them to come on, and they ultimately decided not to do so. They were worried about their business and their reputation, but that
Yeah.
was happening for a very long time. And so, yeah, there's all of those things. I hate to cut you short, but we're kind of getting toward
Oh,
the end of this, and
okay.
I wanted
Yeah.
to. You had mentioned before we talked about this how churches could also be on the
Yeah.
front lines of this and helping with all of this. So tell us
Yeah.
how you think that that is a good source for people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll just refer people to that video of Dr. Ryan Cole, because there you can learn some about why the cancers are becoming more prominent, and that has
Yes.
to do with, in part, due to incomplete mRNA that you could be injected with, that then create their own proteins that are not the spike protein, but can be carcinogenic. Now, here's really good news. What we're finding, and I'm just finding this anecdotally, just asking around, but it seems like people in churches tend to have lower vaccination rates. There are lower vaccination uptake, at least in a lot of churches in this country. And so, in terms of getting your unvaccinated blood, well, where do you want to go? You want to go first to, say, yourself, if you can. If you can't, to a family member, a friend, a relative. But that means the churches have actually pools of people who are poised to help friends, family, other congregants, help society if they want to become involved. So I'm really encouraging churches, please get people involved. Come to SafeBlood.us. It's easy to sign up as a member. It's a $20 a year fee, and if you can't afford it, or that is too high a hurdle, we say we'll give less then. Because really, what people are doing by becoming members of SafeBlood is you are becoming part of the solution, even if you don't need blood, or you don't end up giving blood. But can you imagine the impact churches could have if churches in any given area had, say, 5 or 10 or 20 members that are willing to give blood? And so now, when I have somebody say in Houston who says, they contact us, we need blood, and we say, well, we've got 70 people in Houston who could give you blood, or whatever the number is, because there's 5 participating churches. I mean, churches could do an enormous amount of good becoming involved in this, and so I'd really encourage that.
Yeah, so it could be just as simple as, making yourself available in the system, or as
Yeah.
far as, doing blood drives themselves and things like that. But that's so incredible to hear. $20 a year.
Sure. Yeah, it's $20 a year. And bear in mind, there is, you mentioned blood drives. We are looking at how there could be unvaccinated banks, but that's a technological and logistical feat that is going to be pushed out into the future. There's a
Mhm.
lot that would have to be done to produce that. But what you can do, and that's why Safe Blood's moved in the way we have, we can meet this need right now simply by matching, by people using their own blood, or by matching donors with needy recipients.
One last question before I let you, tell people all the information about Safe Blood. What about the I should say, people that are concerned with others knowing about their vaccination status and being in that database? I think that some people, myself, hey, I'm out there. Everybody knows my position on this, but some
Oh,
people might be concerned that the government or different institutions might come after them if that private information is stored somewhere.
well, that is a great question. I mean, we keep it's private, right?
Mhm.
We don't let people know. The only time anybody becomes known is when they're actually connecting with a donor or with a
Mhm.
recipient.
And that's all
Yeah.
done privately anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very private process. And it's a very simple process. You just go to the website, you sign up, you tell us our blood type, where you're located, add your children names in there if you have children or spouse, and then we've got everybody in the system.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for
Sure.
talking to us about this. And we can have you on too in the future to talk about more of the research that Safe Blood's doing and how that comes to light. And yeah, I'd love to dive more into the cancers that we're seeing popping up, because I personally know of many people who either previously had cancer and it came back again, or have gotten that diagnosis for the first time. So I think that it's all very much related. It's hard to ignore.
Yeah, and a Thai German doctor by the name of Sukrit Bhakti, Bhakdi, has done great work on that. If you look for his videos, he can explain the science of why cancers, and also why we're seeing these rebounds in viruses. People say, "Hey, this virus or something that was in remission, that was suppressed for a long time, like EBV or herpes virus or something, or I had cancer that was in remission for a long time, and now these are coming back. We're seeing these resurgences." He's a great authority on explaining those things.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much,
Sure.
Dr. Ohlers. Can you tell us one last time, how people can get involved with SafeBlood?
Sure. Please go to safeblood.us. It should come up in English. If not, do /en. Right. We're in a lot of different countries. We're a
Yeah.
linguistic group, but safeblood.us is where to go. I recently, just yesterday, I was taken out of Twitter jail for over 2 years.
Oh, yay.
Right, for having the temerity to post good research on hydroxychloroquine. So I'd been banned since September 2020, and I'm back. So you can follow me, at RC Ohlers, OHLERS. We have also, look up. We are just launching our SafeBlood Twitter right now. That will be simply at SafeBlood. So those are ways to, if you want to stay abreast of what we're doing, you can follow us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Clinton. And people can catch you where? What's your show?
Oh yeah, Broken Truth. Yeah, check out brokentruth.com. We're also on Rumble.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And anybody who wants to join hands with We the Patriots USA and their fight for
Yeah.
medical freedom, head over to
Yeah. And
wethepatriotsusa.org.
can I do one more plug? Check out World
Absolutely.
Tribune. Yeah, worldtribune.com. Worldtribune.com. Check them out because that journal, throughout this pandemic, really braved a lot of suppression in order to stay abreast of the top stories on what's been going on.
That is very important. We want to keep those reputable sources going and keep them alive. So thank you, Clinton.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure.